applaud the appointment of Bob Mueller this week as special counsel.
Bob Mueller is a Republican who was appointed by a Republican who served in the Republican administration and crossed over, and stayed on until his term ended. But I don't think many people are saying Bob Mueller is a person who is a biased partisan. He's really sort of anything but.
So what do you think, Richard? I mean, this is what the Republicans said when he was appointed. Now you hear all these Republicans on Capitol Hill trying to make the case, like Jeffrey said, that he's, basically a liberal or has an agenda.
Well, that's some of the Republicans on Capitol Hill. The ones either in safe districts, extremely conservative, pro-Trump districts, or who've lost their mind, because most of the Republicans on Capitol Hill are just trying to keep their head low, knowing it's not going to be good later on in 2018 in the elections. The American people are not buying this, any of these attacks on Robert Mueller, on McCabe, or on anybody else connected with the FBI or connected with the special counsel's office. And these constant tweets, while they may be within the president's First Amendment rights, he is incriminating himself. He's displaying his motives with respect to actions he did take, including the firing of James Comey. And I do think that when you put this tweet together with the other tweets, the one where he apparently acknowledged that he knew that General Flynn had lied to the FBI when he fired General Flynn, and you put it all together, these tweets could be an important part of a legal case against the president for obstruction of justice.
I actually think the president has been more effective than we're giving him credit for here. If you look at the polls, for better or worse, Republicans now have a much more negative view of Robert Mueller than they did when he was appointed. The president has succeeded in politicizing this investigation, and that means that Mueller is seen, at least by more people than previously, as someone who is sort of part of the political maelstrom in which we live, instead of an independent actor. This will serve as an opportunity to attack him if he takes even more direct action against the president. I'm not saying the president was right to do that, but I think we need to acknowledge that there has been a change of perception, at least by the Republican base.
It does appear that
I'll just say everybody who knows Robert Mueller knows it's a lie. Robert Mueller is a loyal American. He's a Republican. And it's a lie being perpetrated by President Trump and his supporters in Congress. Nobody knows Robert Mueller buys into any of this. It's just in Fox News and in the president's Twitter feed.
But it's clear what they're trying to do here is not maybe say, okay, Robert Mueller himself, has some agenda, but perhaps it's his judgment. He brings on people who donated to the Democratic parties. Peter Strzok, who he did take out of the investigation, was texting anti-Trump biased texts. I mean, do you see that do you see that play, Richard?
No, I think he took him out as soon as he found out about the tax. He got rid of him. And, of course, you're going to have people who contributed to campaigns who work in the Justice Department and elsewhere. Every U.S. attorney is going to be a supporter of President Trump and would have been active in his campaign. And the U.S. attorneys under President Obama were supportive of Democratic campaigns. And Americans are investigated and prosecuted by these U.S. attorneys all the time. The idea that somehow the most powerful man in our country is being victimized because there are a handful of staffers on the Robert Mueller team who contributed to Hillary Clinton, I mean, that's a joke.
Well, I think this is such an important point that Richard is making, that, the U.S. attorneys in this country are appointed by, in effect, the president's party in that state. Preet Bharara, who was, is now our colleague at CNN, who was, an aide to Chuck Schumer before he became U.S. attorney here. And I think he did widely acknowledged to be an excellent job. I mean, the fact that there are people in the Justice Department who have previously expressed political views is nothing new. It's not disqualifying, but it's being used here by the president and his allies to create the impression that there is something wrong with this investigation. And that's false, but a lot of people believe it.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think a lot of people believe it then, Jeffrey?
Well, I think because we live in this tribal moment. We live in a moment where people are so closely, feel so passionately either for or against Donald Trump that they are prepared to believe anything that supports their previously expressed beliefs. So people who like Trump believe that anyone who is investigating him has to be somehow a partisan. And Donald Trump and his supporters have, clung to these very thin reeds, Peter Strzok, campaign contributions, and this gives people a reason to believe what they already want to believe, I think.
And it's really the repetition. I mean, the president, time and time again, keeps tweeting about the FBI, keeps tweeting that it's tainted going after individuals. Clearly, like you pointed out in that poll, that is resonating with some of his followers. Go ahead.
And he's the president. And I think, you make a very good point, Pamela, that, when the president tweets, some people think, well, we should just ignore it. It's just but we can't do that. He's the president. I mean, we have always covered the utterances of the president. It's a new technology, but it's still very clearly coming from him. And the repetition really does have an impact.
Yeah, I mean, the president's behavior matters, no doubt. What he puts out on Twitter, even if he thinks about it for 5 seconds, it matters.
Sure does.
All right, Jeffrey Toobin.